All right, what is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to Just Ballin'. And today, I wanted to react to Bleacher Report's grading every team's 2025 trade deadline article. I did want for this to come out on Friday the 7th, but if you were following like my draft live stream over on Strauss, I told you guys that I was battling the flu. It was like the sickest I've almost ever been from like Tuesday to basically started feeling good Friday night. And I don't know if I got sick like from the Luka trade, because then I basically pulled an all-nighter when that deal went down here on the East Coast, and maybe my immune system was just bad. But yeah, worst timing, right, for like the biggest trade deadline in history, and I was so sick. And I kind of battled through it, but then I was like Friday, I was able to work a little bit at night, make some stuff, make some videos. I did like a Bleacher Report stream in the middle of the day, and that even took a little bit out of me. So I'm feeling a lot better. You guys are going to see this on Saturday. Recording this basically halftime of the Mavericks Rockets game, and Anthony Davis looks great so far as a Mav. So I'm sure we're going to see a bunch of 180 and narrative changes based off that game. But yeah, let's react to this article, and I came out with my grades on the Straw channel, so let's see if they're anything different. And we're going to get immediate, I guess, difference, because they had the Atlanta Hawks at a B-. Pretty sure I gave the Hawks an F. So I don't really know if I agree with that. I think for a team that didn't have to trade DeAndre Hunter, they did. And then, you know what? Like, I keep getting the point brought up. Like, I'm always like, you know what? You don't have your first round pick. You don't want them, like, you don't want that to be a top 10 pick. You want to at least try to make the playoffs this year. So why are you going to get relatively worse at the deadline? And you could also be like, Matt, they don't own their pick. And it doesn't really matter where it is, because they're never getting that pick back. So why do they really care that much? I know, but it does hurt a little bit if you're going to give like the San Antonio Spurs Cooper Flag or a top 4 pick in the draft. And yeah, LeVert and Yang aren't probably that far off from DeAndre Hunter, like as a whole, but I'd rather have Hunter. He's under contract as well. LeVert's a free agent at the end of the year. I don't know if they'd want to bring him back. I'm sure they would, maybe in that Bogdanovich type role, more so as like a shot creator, not as like a spot up shooter, or just somebody that's going to run a ton of like off ball screens. But either way, I don't know if I would give the Hawks a B-. I think I would definitely go a little bit lower, because they also did the Terrence Mann trade. Maybe they could turn him around, and maybe they can, and definitely a better defender than Bogdanovich. And they traded Cody Zeller to also help them get under the luxury tax. So yeah, they saved a little bit of money. Like, I wouldn't have minded them like trying to maybe like, I don't know. I guess they wanted to save money at the end of the day, which sometimes that's just what teams want to do at the deadline. Boston, C. I guess C might just be pretty neutral. That's what I think I gave them. They only just traded Jaden Springer to save some money against the luxury tax. And I would agree with that as well. They could have looked to add a big man. They did add Torrey Craig in the buyout market, but it doesn't look like they have plenty of big men, right? Like, you have Tillman, you have Kata, Horford getting up there, and Kristaps with his injury concerns. But I think you could have tried to find a better backup than Cornette. But it's tough. It's tough because they don't have a lot of tradable contracts. So not a lot they can do. I'm fine with it. I still think they can win the title this year. Brooklyn, they get an NA. They didn't make any trades. I see. This is where I docked them. I gave them, I think, a D. I'm glad they traded Schroeder and Dorian Finney-Smith a little bit ago, but they got just second rounders for those guys. They didn't get a single additional first this year. And I know they have a ton of firsts coming up, so they don't need to draft 4 to 5 rookies every year, because they're just never going to be able to play that many guys. But I'm just surprised they didn't look to trade Cam Johnson at the deadline a little bit more aggressively. Maybe there wasn't the market they wanted for him. But if you could have gone 2 first-round picks, I'm pretty sure they could have. Now, if you wanted 2 first-round picks and a good young player, that might be a little bit rich for some teams. Or like 2 unprotected first-round picks. But either way, I think if I were Brooklyn, I would have tried to have moved Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, Cam Thomas, Day'Ron Sharpe, D'Angelo Russell. And all those guys are on your team. That could kind of help you win games throughout the rest of the year, and that could help your or hurt your draft stock. So I disagree with them. Like, an NA, it's an NA. Like, they didn't make any trades, but I honestly would dock them for not making any trades, just because they're a team that probably could sell off some of their veterans right now. But hey, in the offseason, teams are probably going to want Cam Johnson. He's still going to be under contract for 2 more years. I don't think that they're going to have an issue moving him then. They give Charlotte an A-. I think I gave Charlotte an A. Did I give him an A or A+? It was around there. So I agree, like, around the range of an A. I do like them selling high on Mark Williams. And I think, I don't know how valuable that Lakers first round pick in 2031 is going to be. But the Hornets, who I would say, like, about 14 months ago, didn't really have a lot of future draft capital outside of their first round picks. And then they acquire the Miami first round pick in the Rozier trade. They acquire a Dallas first round pick in the PJ Washington trade. They acquired a first round pick in 26. It's like the least favorable of this swap, basically, from the Yusuf Nurkic salary dump, and you get off of Cody Martin, Vasa Micic, and you could just get a little bit more younger, and I like watching Nick Smith Jr. play, and I'm glad there's more touches for him. Dalton Connect is going to get a ton of shots up. I don't know if Cam Reddish is really going to play there at all. He would be an interesting buyout candidate if he did get bought out. But yeah, I think it's smart to sell high on Mark Williams. You have that swap in 2030. I doubt the Lakers will be worse than the Hornets just because they'll have Luka then, or you never know, they might not. But either way, I think this was a good deadline for Charlotte, and they were going to have to pay Mark Williams maybe in a year, and maybe with his injury concerns, it would be kind of risky to do so. It would. And Connect's an older player as a rookie. I don't think he has a super high ceiling, but if he could just be this like really good spot up shooter, he could shoot 38% from three, play 15 to 17 minutes a night, and he's going to get some really good looks playing with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller as well. I'm excited to see Brandon Miller back next year. And I mean, I would love if this team had Donovan Clingan and they didn't take T-John Salon, because then I would have liked every single move the new GM Jeff Peterson has made so far outside of that one. Like, I like KJ Simpson in the second round, and I guess I should be more patient with T-John. But I just thought it was a little bit of a reach at the time. And who knows? Maybe they end up with Cooper Flagg or VJ Edgecombe. The Bulls get a D+. Yeah, I was harsh on the Bulls as well. They're a team that made one trade, basically, and that was Zach LaVine going to Sacramento. They were able to get their first-round pick back fully from the Spurs, so it's no longer top 10 protected. They get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter. Literally not much excitement out of those three players whatsoever. Lonzo Ball is still on this team. Nikola Vucevic is still on this team. They have all these guards, and this team still may go like 500 for the rest of the year because they have still some talent. Now, it's a weird dynamic roster, and I don't know if Billy Donovan's going to be here next year. I don't know if Carney Shovas is going to be here next year. This Bulls team is just kind of in the middle, and I think I'd rather see them do what the Charlotte Hornets have done over the last few years, but they have just been too stubborn in doing so. And I want to see the Bulls being back to one of the best teams in the league. It's fun when the Bulls are exciting. They have one of the best fan bases. They're always number one in attendance, but it's just like, I don't know if ownership cares. The front office has done really not the best job there, and it feels like they're just scared to rebuild. And I get that, but like, where is this getting you? Where is this getting you in the Eastern Conference? I don't think it's getting you anywhere. You're not signing anybody in free agency. I think this could be a big offseason for them. I would like for Vucevic to get traded. I would explore the Dosunmu and Kobe White trade markets as well. I would even explore the Lonzo Ball trade market if it's back to being a little bit more robust, if he could show that he's healthy. I wanted to see Lonzo on a playoff team as well. And they also traded Zach LaVine maybe 2 years too late. The Cavs get an A-. I like what the Cavs did. They made the one move going out and getting DeAndre Hunter, and I think that is an upgrade for them. Not just this year, but next year and the year after that, because he's under contract. It was a little expensive going into the year, but Hunter has played up to that contract. Now, his numbers aren't going to look as good in Cleveland because he's not going to go to like the fourth scoring option compared to being at times the number 2 in Atlanta. But that 26 first round swap, they're going to be better than Atlanta next year. In 28, they're most likely going to be better than Atlanta. So you basically give up an expiring LeVert, who you may not even have afforded because of your roster getting expensive. George Niang, I'm not losing sleep over George Niang. And you're giving up 3 seconds basically for Hunter. This is a home run trade for Cleveland. And we'll see how Hunter can do guarding, like, I don't know if he'll be guarding Mikal Bridges or Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, like whoever he's going to be guarding in the playoffs. But having Jared Allen and Evan Mobley behind him is going to be great for this team's just overall team defense. And the Mavs get an F-. All right, so very harsh on this trade for sure. They give them an F- mainly because they traded away Luka Doncic. I gave them, I initially gave them an F when the deal went down, and then I gave it a D. I think it's a D now, which could go up to like an A if they win it all this year or next year. But if they don't, it goes down to an F. Or it would go down to an F- because just being, like, it just stinks that in order to win this trade, you probably also have to actively root for Luka to fail. And you don't want to do that if you're a Mavs fan, or I hope the Mavs front office doesn't want that. And I know this article came out before this game, and AD, I don't think it's a shocker that AD looks great in a Mavs jersey, and they're gonna have some great games and some great defensive moments and some great offensive moments as well. It's just the fact that Luka's 25 years old. I know I kind of sound like a broken record with all of this now, but yeah, I mean, F minus is fine. I think if you're looking at the long-term ramifications of this deal, but I do still think that they could win it all this year. They just need to get not lucky with their seeding, but they got to start winning games. They got to end up as like the 6th seed, because if they can get like Houston or Memphis in round 1, that's definitely a round 1 series they can pull off. And then after that, anything can happen in the playoffs. So F minus I think is a little harsh, but if like you want to say, yeah, long term, that's fine. I get it at that point. Denver but like I also think going back to this, people really just think like they traded Luka for 2 players and a first round pick. Like they got Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is equivalent to like 8 first round picks. Mikal Bridges went for 6 of them. Anthony Davis straight up would go for like 8 of them. So you did get a very good return for Luka. And AD's 31, like he is 6 years older than Luka Doncic. I'm hoping AD at least has like 2 to 3 more elite years. He looks great right now, but we'll see how his body ages over the next few years, and if he's going to regress a little bit. Like, is he going to lose a little bit of physicality, a little bit of quickness, a little bit of strength? We'll see. But I do think we got to like still respect Anthony Davis as a player. Denver gets a C minus. Yeah, they didn't make any deals. They're they're kind of like Boston in a way, where they're not so far like into the luxury tax or the second apron. It's just they have a lot of big and a lot of small contracts. They don't have a lot of those middle tier contracts, and the only one that they had that they could really move is Zeke Naji, and nobody wants Zeke Naji because you got to pay him for the next like 3 years after this year, and that is not appealing whatsoever. I do think Denver can still win the title this year. I still think they're the second best team in the Western Conference right now, behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. The only thing is, I do think they're going to be making a trade in the offseason, because Christian Brown can get an extension this offseason from the 22 class. Those guys are eligible, so like Paolo, Chet, Jalen Williams, that's who I wanted to say. Like Christian Brown could get a nice like 4 for 80 or whatever it could be extension. Julian Strother would be the year after that. Peyton Watson, he got extended, right? No, he's in the same thing as Brown, so he can get extended at the end of the year. And then you have so much money tied up into Porter, Jokic, Murray, and Gordon. I wouldn't be surprised if Porter or Gordon is traded in the offseason. I don't know if anybody wants that Gordon contract, because I think teams realize like he's a lot better playing with Jokic, one of the most brilliant minds in the NBA, than he would be on most other teams. Maybe a team would take a chance on him. If it was like a player coming back that maybe a team didn't really want to have on their team. I think Michael Porter Jr. is probably the guy that could get moved in the offseason, because I don't know if anybody wants to pay Jamal Murray all that money either. Detroit gets a B+. They got involved in some deals. They got some second rounders, and they only had 1 second rounder going out. They had some roster spots. They had a ton of cap space, and they ended up getting Dennis Schroeder, Lindy Waters, and Josh Richardson. And I think it's fine. I would have liked Detroit to add a little bit more of a true offensive-minded guy than a Dennis Schroeder, but he should be able to take a little bit of the workload off Cade Cunningham as like the prime initiator of this team and the lead ball handler. And I think it's fine. I mean, Detroit didn't do anything too risky at the deadline, and they're trying to see if they're going to get Jaden Ivey back before, but I don't know. I'm not going to get my hopes up on Ivey coming back. Golden State gets a B for the Jimmy trade. I respect it. I do. I mean, like, I'm glad they didn't just lay down and do just minor moves here and there. I think that would have just had a lot of fan backlash. And you know what? You just trade away your 25 first, top 10 protected. You hope that's anywhere. If you miss the playoffs, it's like 13 or 14, not the end of the world. And hey, you make the playoffs, you're fine giving away pick 18 in this draft. You gave away pick 14 in the last draft for Gary Payton. So that is fine for somebody like Jimmy Butler. And if Jimmy Butler can just give you like 80% of what he was in the 24 season, I think that's still a really good player. And I think it's the same thing like Dallas. Like for Dallas, they just got to get into the playoffs as like a 7 seed. I think you just want to avoid that 8 seed so you don't get OKC in round 1. And if you can get Memphis, Houston, I mean, who knows with Denver? Like maybe they're beatable. Maybe it's the Lakers. And then you think you could pull off an upset there. Because Jimmy, Draymond, Curry, we'll see what the best lineup is around those guys. Does it involve Kuminga? Does it involve Pods? Buddy Hield? We'll see over these next few months before the playoff starts. But I'm really excited to watch Jimmy and Steph in Golden State. The Rockets get a C+. They were on the other end of getting Zeller and Springer. They got some second rounders in this deal. I would have liked if they were a little bit more active. I would have given them a C-. This team could definitely look to add some shooting, really. They are one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the Western Conference. Maybe a little bit more size as well, like a little bit more athleticism on the perimeter, but they didn't really want to trade any of their assets. They didn't want to make a notable move. They're fine with what they got right now. And I think ownership in the front office is fine with like a first round exit this year, because it's not like they're playing with house money, because I think they had goals of being this good this year, and they've reached those goals, which is great for them. But I think they realize that this is just the start of a new Houston Rockets era where they can have sustainable success for a long, long time as long as they don't mess it up. Pacers get a C+. They just traded basically James Wiseman and cash for a second rounder. Helps them a little bit to save money under the luxury tax and I guess a roster spot as well, which I believe they just picked up Bismack Biyombo to be like the third string center. I mean, I would have gave this a C- as well. I would have liked to see them do a little bit, but I'm sure nobody wanted Obi Toppin's contract. They could have gotten creative, but they have been one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference over the last few weeks, and I'm sure they realized that they can go in a 7-game series. They were very competitive against Boston in the ECF, and then Haliburton got hurt. I'm sure think they can beat Cleveland, New York, or any other team in a 7-game series with their style of play and their tempo if Haliburton can just give them what we think Haliburton can actually do in a playoff series, and he doesn't have too many offensive stinkers. Clippers get a B. They ended up being relatively active, right? Like, I think it's an upgrade from Mo Bamba to Drew Eubanks at the center spot. They finally get off of PJ Tucker, who really wasn't hanging around too much in that locker room this year. They get some seconds. Bogdanovich for Terrence Mann, which is going to save them some money in 3 years from now because Mann is under contract for 4 more years, and Bogdan was, I believe, for 1 more year after this year, or it's 2. Either way, they could save some money, and Bogdanovich probably can't be any worse in Los Angeles than he was in Atlanta. I thought they could have gone after like somebody like a Jordan Clarkson, but Bogdan I think is in a similar tier of player right now. And this Clippers team doesn't have a ton of young assets. They don't have a ton of first round draft capital to work with. So with all things considered, I think they did a good job. And I think getting all these seconds is kind of nice. I still don't get why a pick would be protected 43 to 60 in the second round, right? Or yeah, why, like, that's like, would you see a pick that's basically 17 to 30 protected in the first round? No. The Lakers get an A+, obviously the opposite of the end of the Dallas Mavericks F-. They get Luka Doncic, Mark Williams, Cleveland Morris, and then the package going out to Charlotte and the Mavericks. Yeah, I obviously love the Luka trade. Everybody loves the Luka trade. He's 25 years old, and now he is your future when LeBron retires because you were always scared on what that future could be. And they responded by getting him a center, and that's Mark Williams. I think I would have preferred them just going after like a Clint Capella, Robert Williams. The 2031 first for Mark Williams is a risk, and if Mark Williams could be healthy and he could play 65 games a year, he could be a home run for this team. And at times his defense wasn't the greatest in the world at Charlotte, and there could be an effort issue, but it's also like you're watching that perimeter defense in Charlotte. It wasn't very good. He's going to be playing with a lot better defenders over in LA, and I don't know if it's a better coach. Like, I'm not going to say JJ is a better coach than Charles Lee. I think that's unfair to Lee because of the talent disparity in their first year of coaching with their respective rosters. But Mark Williams catching lobs from Luka and LeBron is going to be great for his numbers. He's going to put up, I think, some monster numbers at times in LA. I just hope he can stay healthy. Next up at here we got Memphis Grizzlies. They get a D-. They traded away Marcus Smart, Jake Laravia, and a first-round pick. They got in Marvin Bagley and Johnny Davis. Yeah, I didn't really love this deadline for them. I said, like, why not just have Marcus Smart on your roster for the rest of the year? And then it's an expiring in the offseason. Then you can include that in a trade, and like $20 million can get you a lot of places with matching salary. So I didn't really think it was worth trading your 2025 first to get off of that. Now, I didn't realize when it happened, but I forgot they declined Jake Laravia's 4th-year option. And he's been kind of giving some good minutes this year, so I'm excited to see him in Sacramento. Yeah, I didn't really love Memphis's deadline either. Miami gets a B+. They made the Jimmy Butler trade. They also picked up Davion Mitchell from the Toronto Raptors. And you're going from somebody that wasn't playing for you. He was suspended multiple times, and Jimmy Butler. So that's like nothing to Andrew Wiggins, which is at least something. And I'm really excited to watch him as a connecting piece in the Spo offense for Hero, Ware, and Bam. And I think they could really develop some nice chemistry throughout the rest of this year and the following years. And then, hey, you might get like the 13th pick in this draft, and you can add a shooter, a defender, maybe another ball handler. I'm just not sure why they didn't want to keep Dennis Schroeder in all of this. Maybe that would have made them a little bit more expensive, and they didn't want to pay that much if they were in the luxury tax or over the cap, or that could have put them in the first or second apron. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I do think that this was a good deadline for the Miami Heat with all things considered, and what we thought they could have lost so much leverage on Jimmy, and they still got a good player in Wiggins and a first-round pick down the line as well from that deal. Milwaukee gets a B. They made one trade that ended up being multiple teams. They basically got Kyle Kuzma, Jericho Sims. Oh yeah, they made the KPJ for Beauchamp trade, and then they got a second in there. So they basically saved money, a ton of money, and they got under the second apron, which was huge for them. Kuzma actually looked pretty good in his first game with the Bucks, and I didn't like this trade when it happened. I mean, I didn't like the AJ Johnson pick when it happened, and then they traded him away because he was like a couple year developmental project. And I'm like, don't you want to win now? Ryan Dunn makes so much more sense. Who's on the board? And I don't know. I think getting under the second apron is huge for them because it allows for more flexibility. I thought there was another trade to be made. That didn't happen. And we'll see. Like, Kuzma might be just a lot better in Milwaukee. Maybe he just never really wanted to be in Washington anymore. I mean, they are the worst team in the NBA. So I think that may really hurt your motivation and what your energy could be like every night when you're just losing here in and here out. And that could really hurt, like, your confidence and your kind of overall just will for the game at that point. Minnesota gets a C. They didn't make any moves. Apparently, they called for Kevin Durant. It would have been very tough to pull that off because they're a second apron team. I thought Randall could have get traded, but he's on the team. So now I really wonder if Randall's going to pick up that player option at the end of the year. Like, I really wonder if he's going to be a Timberwolves next year. Pelicans get a B for the Brandon Ingram trade and the Daniel Tice trade. See, like, I don't know. I think, like, they're kind of like the Bulls, and they traded Brandon Ingram probably 2 years too late. I don't think they wanted to trade him 2 years ago, and they had goals of maybe winning a playoff series this year. They did, and obviously it's been the year from hell for them as everyone's been hurt. And Olynyk can help them as a contributing piece. They need big man depth, and they get that there. Bruce Brown, I'm sure they're going to look to re-sign in the offseason. And you get Indiana's 2026 first rounder, so they get a little bit of draft capital for Brandon Ingram, who could have left for nothing in free agency. So I get that point of view here. I just think, like, they could have moved Brandon Ingram for something else, maybe in the offseason, and they opted not to do that. So it's going to be a really interesting offseason, I think, too, for the Pelicans. Like, would they move McCollum? Would they move Zion? We're going to go all in on Murphy and Jones. Could they win the lottery? DeJounte's going to miss, like, the first probably few months of next year's season as well, which stinks, and he's probably not going to be the same player. But I think the Pelicans had to move Ingram, so I'm glad at least they did that. Knicks get a C. They just basically moved Jericho Sims for DeLon Wright. I would have liked for them to get a perimeter defender instead of a guard defender, but the Knicks really couldn't do a lot either. They don't have a lot of tradable contracts if they weren't moving Mitchell Robinson, and they didn't do that. So that's like their big trade deadline acquisition, is getting Mitch Rob back. It's kind of crazy that Chet had like this major hip injury and is coming back still before Mitch Rob, and his ankle surgery that he had way back in the offseason. I think there was a setback in it though. OKC gets a C-. They basically just got some seconds for taking on Daniel Tice. They waived him. Another team I would have liked to add some shooting, like Cam Johnson, would have been cool. Or just like to make a move in general. But this team is deep, and they're getting fully healthy now. And their big trade deadline acquisition could technically be Chet Holmgren, who just came back last night. The Orlando Magic get a D+. They didn't make any moves at all. Now, speaking of shooting, this is the worst shooting team in the NBA. They're 29th in the NBA in terms of offensive rating. But I also think for this front office, they have still such this young core with Franz, Paolo, and Suggs. And they've also had a year from hell with injuries, and everybody's been banged up. They've been decimated by injuries at times. So I think they're okay with, you know what, if we're a playing tournament exit, we get a nice draft pick. If we're a first round exit, that's fine. We at least get there. And then we just want to see this team fully healthy next year, full offseason of rest, recovery. And we're going to have Paolo, Franz at 100% going into next year, because they might even be playing banged up right now. And Paolo has struggled with his efficiency since coming back. Philly gets a C-. They had a weird deadline. I did like the Grimes move for them. They're going to have to extend him at the end of the year, and he could be a nice complementary piece for this team. It's funny because Daryl Morey said if you squint, this team could still win a title. And Cade Cunningham was out last night, and the Pistons were like blowing them out throughout the whole game, and Maxey, Paul George, and Embiid all played. But there was a lot of picks moved at the deadline between Philadelphia. Phoenix gets a C+. I was harsh. I gave them an F. They get Cody Martin and Vasa Micic, and then they basically traded away. Why are they saying they got a first? Oh, yeah, okay, they counted that 3-for-1 trade with Utah. But yeah, they traded one of those picks they got in that 3-for-1 with Utah in the draft pick swap for Martin and Micic. Now, I believe both their contracts are not guaranteed for next year, so they can cut both of them in the offseason and get under the second apron, which could be huge for them, and that can allow more flexibility with trades. So maybe that was their goal here. It just stinks they had to trade away a first-round pick to do so because they had to get off of Yusuf Nurkic's money. And I think that just goes back to, obviously, they regret the Bradley Beal trade, but they killed their locker room chemistry with that, trying to get Beal out of there. And then also the DeAndre Ayton trade for Nurkic didn't really work out. I know they got Grayson Allen out of it, but Nurkic just turned into such a negative asset for this team. And I guess now he's off the roster, so they don't have to worry about him. Portland gets a D-. They didn't make any trades. I mean, I'm fine. Like, I didn't think anybody was trading for Jeremy Grant. I would have traded Anthony Simons and Robert Williams. They said, like, what about Tumani Kamara, an affordable defensively dominant forward any contender would have ponied up a first rounder to acquire. I don't think they should have traded him. Kamara's like fairly cheap for the next few years. He's a former second rounder, and he is a great player for this team going forward. And Portland has been playing great basketball as of late, and I don't think anybody was trading for Grant's contract. But Robert Williams is the only guy that I think made the most sense because you have Aiden and Klingon. Like, you want to keep playing Klingon more minutes. Williams kind of eats into that because you're not really playing them at the same time. So maybe Simons gets traded in the offseason. I was just a little shocked Robert Williams didn't get traded. Sacramento gets a C+. I actually like the moves they made. I like them getting Valanciunas. I think he's the best backup center they've had in quite some time. I like them getting Jake Moravia and taking a flyer on him because he could turn into a nice kind of swingman option for them. And I didn't love that. Like, I think Zach LaVine he's not better than De'Aaron Fox, but he's not far from him. But he is 2 years older. He's going to be making less money than Fox soon because Fox is going to get a very big extension either this offseason or next. I just didn't like the draft capital return. Like, you get San Antonio's 27 first. They're probably going to be good then. You get Minnesota's 2031 first. That could be something, but hey, they have Anthony Edwards, so I don't know. And then you get a 2025 top 14 protected Charlotte pick, which turns into 2 seconds. So you only got 2 first-round picks for Fox, and I don't know. I just felt like you could have gotten one of the Atlanta picks, but maybe not because you didn't get Castle or any of those young guys. I guess that was never on the table. Spurs get an A-. I would give them an A+. I would give them an A+. Getting De'Aaron Fox for that package and not really trading any way of the Hawks picks is an absolute home run by them. They have some Dallas swaps down the line as well. They have a Celtics first-round pick still on their belt, and they could definitely make another big trade in the offseason. And they got Fox for, I think, like 50 cents on the dollar. Toronto gets a B-. I like the idea of them getting, I don't know, like Ingram of his caliber, speaking of like 50 cents on the dollar, probably 20 cents on the dollar for Brown, who they were never bringing back. Olynyk, like, got 2 years left, and a Indiana top 4 protected pick next year, which is probably going to be in the late teens, early 20s for Brandon Ingram, who could put up 22, 5, and 5 on really good efficiency. But this team is going to be very expensive with Quickly, Barrett, Ingram, Barnes, and Pirtle. And I don't even know if that's like a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference, but maybe they're going to keep developing over time. I'm just really intrigued to see how Ingram and Barnes work out, if they are going to be a good enough duo, and if it's going to work in the half court. Utah gets an A-. I was harsher on Utah. I mean, they got a bunch of seconds getting involved in these deals at the deadline. Take a flyer on KJ Martin. I don't know if they waived him, but they did waive Jalen Hood-Schifino. I just thought, like, why is Clarkson still on the team? Could they not have gotten anything for Sexton or John Collins? Because Collins could leave them in the offseason for nothing, which would be kind of a negative loss for them just because a negative loss. Well, I don't know if that made sense. But either way, just not getting anything for John Collins could hurt you if he does opt out of his player option and leave. I think they could have got something for John Collins. Could you have gotten basically A.J. Johnson and Chris Middleton for John Collins? Now, I don't know if they'd want to do that. And maybe they're going to look to extend John Collins. And they probably should. Especially if they're going to trade away Markkanen in the offseason, which I don't know if that's happening. And the Wizards get a B+. I'd honestly up that a little bit more. I think them getting a first-round pick from Marcus Smart is great. And you get better, maybe, leaders in the locker room in Chris Middleton and Marcus Smart. I mean, we'll see about that. They did waive, I believe, City Sissoko. But yeah, they get a first-round pick. They got, I believe, a 2026 first-round pick in this deal as well, I think. There's just so many swaps nowadays that it's really kind of tough to keep track of. But either way, they got some solid veterans. You take a flyer on A.J. Johnson, a recent first-round pick. You get some good draft capital for Kyle Kuzma, Valanciunas, like a lot of the guys that are just not doing anything for you now or in the future. So I really like the Wizards deadline. Like, shout out to the Hornets and the Wizards, who I think had some of the better deadlines this year. And that's gonna be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy me reacting to this Bleacher Report article of their grades. If you guys want to see anything more like this, let me know in the comments on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, I really appreciate you guys over there. If you can leave a rating and review. Apologize again for no kind of I guess upload on Thursday, right? I don't think I did anything on Thursday or Friday to the pod. I was just fighting the flu, so I could only like stomach doing so much content. And I just had to like sacrifice this at that time. I was like, I can't even like, at one point I was like, I'm like shivering for 2.5 hours, and then I'm like sweating my ass off for 2.5 hours. I was just going back and forth, had a terrible cough. It was not fun, but hey, we got through it. The worst is behind me, and yeah, hopefully I don't get the flu ever again. So yeah, thank you guys all for watching and listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.